Good morning, everybody. It is me, yours truly, and my trusted sidekick, Jasper, the astrological cat. And we are back for the Astro Weather. Nothing like a nice cold Zevia, 0-calorie, stevia-powered Coca-Cola. Isn't that right, Jasper? How are you doing today? Yeah. You feeling good? He had an upset tummy this morning, so hopefully he's feeling a little bit better after a night where he he's become very territorial now that the upstairs cat is around. So at night he burrows into the bed just to reclaim his position as the number one cat here. Isn't that right? The upstairs cat, also known as Peachy, is still in the process of integrating. And speaking of integrating, let's talk about today's astrology and how you theoretically can integrate it. And we are deep into Pisces season. We're just passed over the midpoint. So today the sun is at 16 degrees Pisces. Big shout out to Elizabeth, our good friend down in Houston. Happy birthday, Elizabeth. I hope it's a wonderful day. And to all the other school of fish out there whose birthday it is today, we hope that you have a magical solar return, as it should be. All right, so let's get into today's astrology. We're going to start right off with the full moon in Virgo. I think this is one of the harder solar lunar axes, to be honest with you. I mean, they're all fairly polar opposite, but I can make a case that for some signs, the polar opposition certainly has a type of magnetic attraction. Clearly, with the sun in Taurus and the moon in Scorpio, that's a very magnetic polar opposition, right? It's repulsive, but it's also compulsive at the same time, right? There's the intensity of Eros and Psyche. Psyche, of course, being Scorpio and Eros being Taurus. It's an interesting axis, even when you flip them around with the Scorpio sun and the Taurus moon. One can make a case that the Sagittarian sun and the Gemini moon find each other fascinating in terms of their ability to think about the big picture and overshoot their mark, while at the same time break things down into their fundamental parts and parcel, right, which would be Gemini, and they complete each other in some ways. And I could go around the wheel and sort of make a case for how these various oppositions work together. But in the case of Virgo and Pisces, it's more of a shotgun marriage in some ways, because we know that the Virgo moon is critical. I mean, it really is a critical moon. And I've talked about the Virgo moon in my own experience with both my parents having Virgo moons, my father just coming off of a new moon in Virgo, and my mother born on a full moon in Virgo. So I got to come in both ways, right, with that moon. And those were two people that were very hard on themselves, extremely hard on themselves. And the position of the moon matters in the chart. And in my father's case, being born, he was a Leo, so he's just coming off the new moon. So we have a bit of a Shiva moon with his Virgo moon, and he always struggled in a lot of ways to find a meaningful work and purpose in the world. And there's generally a greater insistence on the individual's part when the moon is new or close to new, that they have something that fills their cup, right? And in his case, it didn't really work out so well. Great with hobbies, not so great with finding that kind of purposeful Virgo emotional expression. It's a bit easier with the full moon when everything is kind of on display, and even in all of its sort of analytical and critical warts, the Virgo full moon can be very effective in a person's chart. And so that's what we're looking at today. But when we get into Pisces, Pisces is a sign that does not differentiate. Pisces is a sign that's about merging and breaking down barriers and one world, one love, one peace, that sort of thing, right? There's the potential for unconditionality with Pisces. And so here we have Mercury and the Sun and Neptune, and Saturn now has just made its way into Pisces. So we can talk about even Saturn today. It's a school of fish, a veritable school of fish. The question is, what kind of fish are we talking about? But all of these planets, all these luminaries are pointing towards some form of merging, even with Saturn, which differentiates. The idea of Saturn is that it breaks things down so that the merging can occur, or whatever sign Saturn is in, it goes through a process of breaking the walls down so that there can be a new story, right? A new chapter in Saturn's evolution, both in a person's chart and in sort of the overall patterns of the sky. And so we have all of this nascent, and in Neptune's case, not so nascent, call to merge. While over here, the moon in Virgo is not about merging. The moon in Virgo separates things out and shines a light on where things are not working. And the challenge here with this particular full moon is, the only thing we would need to make this even more lopsided would be Venus and Venus's placement in Pisces. But we know that Venus has moved on and it's in Aries. And so we have this luminary that stands out, and that's kind of a theme for today. And you may find yourself standing out in some way, shape, or form, because this is the crowd. And in Pisces can exhibit some of the best and the worst traits of the zodiac. I did a show on Pisces on Sunday night. I kind of get into, the broad application of the sign and some different Saturn and Pisces periods, etc. So, Pisces represents the best and the worst. That's just the nature of Pisces. And today we'll start the day and we'll get into some of the worst. So the moon in Virgo is uncompromising. It stands apart from the pack. It stands apart from the crowd. It stands apart from the, hey, can we just get along? Right? Because that's kind of the vibe over here. Can we just get along? And the moon in Virgo is like, no, we can't just get along. There are things in the world, there are things in my life that need to be addressed. So today is the moon of the sore thumb. And, these things, it's like water moving in two directions, right? That's the nature of Pisces, the fish that is swimming in two directions. So here today, there's the old hammer and the nail analogy. Like one part during the day, and even to some extent tomorrow, you could be the hammer and then you could be the nail, because that's how Virgo operates. Virgo is indiscriminate in its action to be discriminating. And it's a fussy moon, right? It is a fussy, but I'll tell you the upside of the Virgo moon today is you cannot abandon your standards. This is what the lesson of today's moon is. You may have to stand out. You may have to stand alone. You may have to suffer the slings and arrows of being the church lady. But it's the way it is, right? This is the way it is with the Virgo moon. Now, if you get too critical and you get too rashy, I'll use the word rashy. If you get too rashy, the mob will be there to meet you. This is the mob. right here. That's the mob. So do you have the courage? Do you have the character, if needed, to stand out today so that your morals, your character, the things that you believe in, your scruples, that's an important word, are not compromised? This is an uncompromising moon. Let's throw in the square to Mars. It's also a quarrelsome moon. So now we get into the T-square territory. Now, remember, I started talking about the sun moving into a tighter T-square with Mars on Sunday night. Here we go. We're 5 degrees in now, 5-degree orb tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, that orb really shrinks and gets very close. And the emotionality, the hair trigger of that T-square is very, I think tomorrow, it's pretty critical now, but I would say probably tomorrow, as the moon is cycling out of Virgo, and so we get into the 3rd decan, which puts it in the Taurus decan, but it will still be in square with Mars, and it will have the sun, and it'll be opposing even tighter Neptune. So tomorrow, even though we're coming off of the full moon, the critical nature of this moon and this T-square is really amplified. And we're talking about mutable energy, so things can erupt very, very quickly. They can subside quickly as well. But, once the damage is done, the damage is done. I think this is a tricky 24 hours to navigate because the standards here are demanding. It's illuminated, right? This is kind of where we are. And you may have to stand alone, and you may have to take the heat, right? With this Mars moon square, you may have to take the heat on it. And then the Mars Neptune square is watch out for the crowd, watch out for the mob. This is one of those days where the mob, 24-hour period, mob warning, mob alert warning. This is where the mob can lose their minds. And where do they lose their minds? In most spaces and places, online. So keep your eyes on online world, especially with Mars and Gemini. We're talking about it's really interesting. I follow sports, and the big story in sports over the last 48 hours is John Morant, and how John Morant flashed a gun. There's Mars, right, on his Instagram Live. He's at a club in Denver, or I think they were in Colorado playing the Nuggets. He plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, which, by the way, I think is a stupid name. I don't know why. I mean, they were the Vancouver Grizzlies, and that makes some sense because there's grizzly bears up there. But Memphis, I don't know. They should change the name. They had a USFL team called the Showboats. I think that's a really good name. The Memphis Showboats. Anyway, John Moran, whose nickname is now John Warrant, he flashed a gun on Instagram. He got suspended by the league for 2 days. Could you imagine that? 2 days suspended. What would happen if somebody who may not be in the same socio-political zip code as John Morant flashed that gun? I wonder how long their suspension might be. Anyway, I'm just thinking out loud here. But now he's paying the price. The T-Wolves have suspended him, right? So we can see here Mars and Gemini. That was a big uh-oh, and kind of a fuck up, right? And here's a guy whose career is hurtling towards self-immolation with the Mars-Neptune square. So just, this is in the air right now. This is really in the air. So this is one of those days, 48-hour period, and even beyond, when the moon moves into Libra, it's a bit more conciliatory and, trying to find a win-win, but we're still dealing with this ongoing trajectory of Mercury and Sun and Neptune squaring off against Mars. These are fractious energies. And in Pisces, it's the sign that, again, encapsulates and symbolizes the scapegoat. So, on the one hand, you can sort of look at your role in the whole scapegoat process. Are you a victim? Are you really a victim? Or do you want to take responsibility for the things that are happening in your life, right? That's one of the integers here of this aspect. Or you can step back and you can watch the process of victimization in action. And the thing about Pisces, it's very archetypal. It's Scorpio and Pisces tend to be very archetypal. And these images just emerge out of the soup of the collective unconscious. So I would not be surprised if over the next 24 hours, we begin to see some of these archetypal versions of what a victim is or what they look like, because it's definitely in the air. This is cry wolf energy. This is definitely cry wolf energy. But I think we'll see some lone voices in the wilderness with this moon in Virgo. It's a very unpopular moon. And the stance, the ethics, the morals, everything that goes along with the moon in Virgo today it just stands out. And if you don't mind being the whack-a-mole, go for it, right? And sometimes with energies like this, you can't not I wouldn't use the word descend, but you can't not deny these energies because they're very strong. The full moon energy is really strong, especially in Virgo, because it illuminates things, right? And it also illuminates potentially our own shortcomings. That's the other part of the Virgo moon, is that, we'll look in the mirror and go, well, how can I accuse that person? Or how can I point my finger at that group when my own backyard isn't cleaned up, right? So that's the other side of the Virgo moon. And it's a very powerful moon, but I can't think of two other signs that are probably less predisposed in some ways than Pisces and Virgo, because they're really very, very different. Very different. And, Pisces just wants to be accepted. Pisces just wants to be accepted and loved. And the Virgo moon doesn't have those same kinds of qualifications. So I can't think of, unless the Pisces is a masochist and they're dealing with the sadistic version of the Virgo moon, well, then maybe they'll get along just fine. There is a little bit of that energy in the air today too, by the way. Now we have the army of Aries. We have Vesta, Jupiter, and Chiron, and Venus, and Juno. And spring energy is definitely in the air, even though I know that they're still dealing with snow of all places in California. There is this energy of rebirth and the shoots of life being visible for all to see. I'm seeing it here. I'm getting grass growing for the first time in a year since we actually had some rainfall last week. So there's a lot of initiatory energy in the air. A lot of initiatory energy. When this moon moves into Libra later tomorrow and then on Wednesday, it'll be interesting to see how we negotiate the initiatory energy. It's not always easy to start new projects on a full moon or just coming off a full moon. But keep your eye on who moves into your life when the moon is in Libra. Because when that moon circles around and we come into the new moon phase, when the sun is in Aries, that's a really important time. So you can get a sense of who the players are going to be as this moon comes off the full moon and still fairly illuminated in new partnerships, new strategies, new opportunities to create and bond with another begin to emerge. And then the potential for that to happen is definitely ripe on the Aries new moon. So we're going to be moving into a very interesting season here as soon as the moon moves into Aries, because we're coming to the end, right? This is the end of the astrological new year. I think those are the big energies of the day. It's interesting because Jupiter here's in an inconjunct with the moon, right? So it's a tricky inconjunct because Jupiter is just so big and expansive, and the moon in Virgo is not that. I mean, the moon in Virgo, the aperture is really, really tight. And so we have this this Jupiterian back, which I think is argumentative, because Jupiter in Aries is kind of take no prisoners. You know, it is the army, right? Jupiter in Aries is the army. It's the troops. And in some ways, it kind of is the mob, but this is really mobby energy with Pisces. So on the back end here, right, with the moon in Virgo, there's this insistence, this intensity with Jupiter in Aries, which is driving this Virgo moon. It's sort of like having a supercharger on the back end here, which I think makes this Virgo moon potentially even more dangerous. Because the thing with the Virgo moon is it's pretty timid in a lot of ways. As a sign, Virgo is pretty timid, pretty conservative. But when we have it in the full moon, and we have Jupiter as part of the inconjunct, and even Chiron's playing inconjunct, and even Venus is playing inconjunct, you got all this Aries inconjuncting the moon. So there's an intensity and an imperative to express oneself. And that's the other part here, because the Virgo moon is also Victorian. You know, it's a Victorian moon. And all that Aries is just hot, right? It's hot. It's, borderline erotic energy. Aries is life force. So even in this configuration, there's this passionate and volcanic energy that's trying to emerge. And when you get into that territory with the Virgo moon, it can be misdirected. You know, I'm thinking of Nurse Houlihan from MASH. You know what I mean? Because on the surface, she's the perfect example. Because on the surface, she's very prim and proper and by the book. But then she gets around Frank, and all of a sudden, you know, she's this volcano of passion that's just kind of waiting to erupt, right? It's interesting because his last name is Burns. So is that his name? Is it Frank Burns from MASH? And to me, that's the inconjunct passion mob with this Victorian Virgo moon. So that's another thing. You're dealing with your hidden, smoldering passions in the light of this suffragette moon. Okay, let's get into the start of the day. You guys know who he is. He was probably one of the most loathsome creatures during the Trump administration. Today's star of the day is Peter Strzok, which I always thought his last name was weird. It's like if you're on Wheel of Fortune, his name and the appropriate response would be, "I'd like to buy a vowel." Look at him. He's demonic looking. Look at that face. All right, so what do we know about Peter Strzok? Well, he's got the Mercury-Neptune square. And in most cases, when I deal with the Mercury-Neptune square with somebody in their chart, in most cases, the people of a Mercury-Neptune square tend to be honest people. Their problem with the Mercury-Neptune square is that they deal with dishonest people. And their discernment when it comes to listening to them and believing them and agreeing with them is challenged. Because most people, I believe, are honest. Most. That said, there are people with the Mercury-Neptune square who are flat out liars. And they'll use any justification that they have in order to lie. And I think Peter Strzok is in this category with his Mercury-Neptune square. And he could justify the fact that Donald Trump was the worst thing that could happen to the United States, and that he, Peter Strzok, is the person who is going to make America great again, because he's driven by the idea that that his morals and his scruples are the ones that are superior to Trump's. And we see this even with Jupiter, which is the highest planet in his chart. It's at apex, and it's in its own house in Sagittarius, the ninth house of Sagittarius. So it takes on a real prominence, right? And what do we know about strong Jupiter placements in Sagittarius, whether they're in the sign of Sagittarius or in a prominent position like the ninth house or the first house? The person is absolutely convinced that they're right, they're correct, that their version of reality is the one that has the most resonance and truth. And in Strzok's case, in Scorpio, it's fixed, so he's not going to come off that. No, he is thoroughly convinced that his version of truth and morality is the one that has the greatest merit. You know, when I look at his chart, you know what I see in his chart? I see an actor. Peter Strzok is an actor. He's got the sun in Pisces, which automatically is actor material. He has that Neptune conjunct his midheaven. And here, Neptune takes on the sign of the artist. So he has Sun, Venus, trine Neptune. This guy's an actor. Even if he's an operative, he's an actor. And I would, if you sat down and had a conversation with Peter Strzok, first of all, he'd tell you he's the smartest guy in the room. You know, with Mercury in, is Mercury's in Pisces, my bad. It's not Aquarius, but still in the first house. So he's got that Mercury in Pisces, first house, squaring Neptune. I mean, he's really a liar. This guy's duplicitous. And it looks like he is born very close to an eclipse. He's got that sun at 14, moon at 12, and the true node at 11. That's eclipse territory, boys and girls. And that's solar eclipse territory. And people that are born in eclipses have faded lives in some ways. And we may never hear from Peter Strzok again, but for a brief period of time, how can we not remember his demonic scowl as he lectured the populace about the correct moral position that apparently he had a patent on or a mortgage on. The other thing with him, he's got this Mars-Saturn conjunction in Taurus, so he's stubborn as fuck, right? He's just really stubborn, and he's not going to move off of his position at all. You know, once he goes down a certain path, he's not going to deviate. And he never really deviated from his position when he was sitting down in front of, was it the Senate? They were questioning him about his role in this whole Russiagate thing and then beyond, right? And the thing about Strzok, which came out in the news during that time, is that he belonged to both the FBI and the CIA. So he's, and who knows what other agencies that this guy had affiliations with. And to me, you just see this all over his chart, with Neptune being very slippery on the midheaven. Jupiter and Scorpio at the top of the chart. And Scorpio is one of those signs. To me, there are two signs that I think really align with the intel agencies, and that's Scorpio and Gemini. And he has this extremely prominent Jupiter. I believe it's in its detriment, right? In Scorpio up here. So the other thing that I found interesting about his chart is like when he was testifying, like what was going on. And again, you can clearly see that there was some shit going on in this guy's life. Let me see if I can find the right chart. I did a synastry when he was being hammered. All right. Where is he? All right, let me do this. I'm gonna have to go in and reconstruct this thing. Give me 1 second. Okay, I hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, so we have that. And let's see. And for everybody who's shared your kind words and well wishes for my mother, thank you for that. She's doing well. She's back on her feet and feisty as ever. So thanks for all your kind thoughts, good wishes, and prayers. They seem to have really made a difference. All right, so here we go. Let's check this out. Now, what's really interesting, this is July 12th, 2018. So we're 2 years into the Trump administration, and all this stuff is starting to erupt, right? And Jupiter's in Scorpio, so Strzok is having his Jupiter return, which means that a lot of this is going to be on display because the ninth house is kind of out there and open. It's publishing, it's like an open book, and he's feeling uber confident because of the Jupiter return. But look what we have over here. We have the South Node on his ascendant in Aquarius, and Mars is here as well. So he's being attacked, right? He's having to go through interrogation, and so we're seeing into his persona, and he's a weird guy. I mean, make no mistake about it. Aquarius rising, and all this Pisces. He's just a weird guy. And so we're beginning to see into how weird he is. Also over here, we have the true node in Leo. And one of the things that comes out is his affair with Lisa Page. So we see on the descendant, the true node is revealing relationships. And then there's Black Moon, Lilith, and Leo. Hello. I don't know how this impacted his own marriage. I really don't care. But it's, again, his relationships are on display. And his persona is also on display as well. And here we have the Neptune conjunction with his sun. And this is one of those instances where Neptune definitely plays the role of scandal with the conjunction with the sun. Sometimes the Neptune-Sun conjunction can be really profound and very deep and very mystical, right? It sort of blurs the lines between worlds, and veils get thin and all that stuff. And in the case of Peter Strzok, you get demon face. You get demon face here. He's also going through his Chiron return. This is a very interesting time for him. Personally, not that I really care much, but Pluto's in his 12th house. Saturn's about to go there, and then what happens after this? He vanishes. Like, he is off the radar now, and he's probably been reinserted. I think he had to step down, but remember, this is a guy that had dual affiliation with the FBI and the CIA, so they just probably moved him into another group or division. I think he spoke 3 or 4 languages. He's a spook. That's what he is. He's a spook, and a spook is another name for a ghost. And when I think of Pisces, I think of ghosts. I think of the 12th house. I think of spirits that are unloosed and unchained, and they come around and they make their presence known, sometimes even haunt us. So that's your star of the day, Peter I'd like to buy a Val Strzok. All right, thanks for being here. The announcements are as follows. Of course, I'm going to be over on 15 Minutes of Flame shortly in a half an hour. Let me give you the visual for that. It's right there. 15 Minutes of Flame starts at 9/11 Central Standard Time. And we're going to talk about the marketplace of ideas and the whole notion of competing social models, which seems to be in the air. We'll talk about that in more over on 15 Minutes, which lasts an hour and a half. And by the way, if you are into CBD and you want some of the best CBD that you can get on the internet, organically sourced and processed and distributed, it's a human distribution model. Check out truehempscience.com. That's truehempscience.com. That is the sponsor of the show. And if you order $100 or more of their fine CBD product, and I can give you a visual right here. In fact, I'm going to take some in between shows. There's the 19. If you order $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you will get free product. Throw it into your order, which is always nice, like a little Christmas. And if you order $150 or more, you get free shipping. That's truehempscience.com. All right, thanks for being here. Everybody, have yourself a very blessed day. And, watch out for that prickly Virgo moon. And sometimes it just happens.